very short.
Where's the little?
Yeah, exactly. Right on our face.
Wow, y'all quiet it down. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Gerald Henry, Executive Director of the Western Caucus Foundation. Thank you all for joining us here today. As it was Alaska Week here in DC, we figured, it was a good time to highlight all good things Alaska and what Alaska is doing for our country, and then talk about a few of the impediments, federal impediments, to keeping it from being as even greater than it already is. So we love Alaska, and just a public service announcement, those who are in part of the Western Caucus stakeholder group, we will be in Alaska in August, which you probably already know, but we're very excited to be doing that. We'll be with the Kenai Sportfishing Association for their classic as well while we're there. So exciting times. Look forward to the information on that coming up soon. In addition, policy panel here today is basically, this is a live stream event. This is what we like to do is reach beyond just the rooms in Capitol Hill to our stakeholders throughout the country. So this is live, it's live stream, but we recorded. You can then view it again and share with folks via our social media and our YouTube channel later on. So please feel free to expand on this and share this with other folks. First, I'm going to turn it over to Congressman Begich for a welcome and opening remarks.
All right. Thanks, Daryl, and appreciate your leadership in helping to pull this all together. Thank you. This is Alaska Week in Washington, and so this is a special time for us to feature our largest state as the executive vice chair of the Western Caucus. It's a privilege and an honor to represent Alaska to the other Western states. We are the westernmost state in the country, and we have a lot to offer. We're going to talk about that today, touch on some of those various areas. We're a resource state, whether it's critical minerals and base metals, whether it's oil and gas and other energy, whether it's tourism, whether it's fishing, whether it's timber. We have a lot to offer the rest of the United States. And with this administration and in this 119th Congress, we've been able to advance the cause of Alaska and really highlight the role that Alaska has to play in reestablishing so much of that domestic manufacturing base that we've been talking about for a number of years. Alaska is unique in the country. We're proud of it as Alaskans, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to talk about that here today.
Great, thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman. I'm going to introduce our speakers here today, our guests. Really great to have them. Kati, President and CEO of the Alaska Chamber of Commerce. This is the state's largest business advocacy organization. And previous to that, she was a campaign manager for a ballot measure, communications director at the Resource Development Council of Alaska, and special projects manager at the Alaska Oil and Gas Association. We also have Deantha Skibinski, born and raised in Anchorage in Big Lake, Alaska. She's the executive director of the Alaska Miners Association. Previously, she served on staff of the Resource Development Council, where she advocated for mining, tourism industries, and managed the efforts of the cruise ship head tax. I remember that. And the mining shutdown ballot initiatives, I should say, that have been going on in Alaska in the past. We have Rebecca Logan, CEO of the Alaska Support Industry Alliance. The group is a 47-year-old professional trade association representing more than 500 companies and 35,000 employees who support Alaska's oil and gas and mining industries. And then we also have Shannon Martin, Executive Director of the Kenai River Sportfishing Association. Look forward to working with her in August and being there in the Kenai. She's a lifelong passion for fishing and serves on several industry boards and community boards, including the Resource Development Councils, the Chamber of Commerce, and other groups. And she is just an avid sportsman and great for her organization. And so reaching out here and kind of want to kick things off. Congressman Begich, how is the Western Caucus working to ensure federal policies that reflect the realities on the ground in places like Alaska?
Well, it's a good question. It's in, it really serves to highlight the role of the Western Caucus. In the House in particular, a lot of the representatives, a lion's share of the representatives, are not in the West, right? The nation's population is concentrated in large part east of the Mississippi. And so while we are proud to have members from all over the United States in the Western Caucus, it's always been important for us to highlight what makes the West unique in the United States. And so much of that is resource focused. It's also our public lands and the opportunity that we have on those public lands to enjoy hunting and fishing and recreating opportunities as well. At the end of the day, the issues of the West are not the issues of the East in our nation. And we suffer more from regulatory overburden and permitting challenges in the West. And it's part of the job of the Western Caucus to make sure that the rest of the Congress understands what the West has to offer the rest of the United States, but also what the regulatory environment coming out of DC has caused in terms of our ability to develop and have economic prosperity in the West. And so that's part of what we do in the Western Caucus. That's what we advocate for, is permitting reform and opportunities to open up the West, whether at the resource issues we've talked about, water rights. We're blessed in Alaska with a lot of water, okay? But my colleagues in the West often say that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And they're right. And so there are a lot of things that are unique to us in the West, and it's an honor to be a part of the Western Caucus, where we advocate for the policies that are going to advance the cause of the Western states.
I like to say the Western Caucus is like a cultural exchange program for the West and the rest of the country. So get to understand that. And Congressman, as Executive Vice Chair of the Western Caucus, you are in a great role advocating for that. I kind of want to open up the whole group now and kind of throw out there, Western Caucus is really behind the push for some of the permitting, reforms with the Speed Act and the Permit Act that's out there. What are some of the projects in Alaska that aren't on the board yet, but could be helped through this permitting process if we get this accelerated permitting in some of these fixes? So throw it down to the group.
That's a long conversation. Honestly, permitting, that was going to be one of my answers for my Deantha specific questions, but honestly, permitting reform to change to get us to a point where there is predictable regulatory structures in America, the opportunities are endless. For my industry, I represent the mining industry in Alaska. There are about 26 advanced stage exploration projects right now. All of them have various permitting challenges, and really, if there was a long game, durable, predictable solution, we would see advancement of several of those.
Same answer.
I'm sure it's the same for oil and gas and the other industries that I'm happy to partner with.
Great. And, as we all support responsible development in practice in Alaska, how does federal policies get help in that effort?
Well, I think kind of echoing what the Congressman said and what Deantha said, predictability is kind of the name of the game. We are a big place. We are very remote. We have big projects that span through the permitting process and the litigation process, span many administrations. And so when lawmakers are thinking about what the policies are going to be, for us, it almost has an outsized approach. We need it to be durable. We need it to be predictable so that, when a new administration comes in, we can't rip permits away. We know litigation, of course, is part of the process always, but looking for some efficiencies there is very important to all of the big industries in the state of Alaska. And one thing I just want to say from a chamber perspective, one thing that I think makes the Alaska Chamber a little bit more unique than other statewide chambers is, yes, I represent all business in the state, but almost all businesses are there to support the oil and gas companies, the mining companies, tourism. So I have kind of an outsized, I think, love of those industries, and always proud to partner with people at this table and many others around the state.
Any others? We'll jump over to Shannon, and we're kind of talking about the responsible development. What does that balance look like when it comes to fisheries in Alaska? How do we work through that balance of development and conservation and promoting fisheries? Because the fisheries, we put, you're on the recreation side, making sure that is available to folks.
That's exactly it, making sure that the access is still there. We have some of the nation's greatest sport fisheries and opportunities. And so when we're looking at these major projects and they're putting roads through, the backcountry, we want to make sure that there's still opportunity for folks to go out, be able to drop a line in the river, be able to launch a boat and access that.
Can you talk a little bit about the sport fishing industry in Alaska? Like how big is it? What does it mean to the state?
So annually, we've got about 500,000 sport fish licenses that we sell, and 350,000 of those are to non-residents. Being a lifelong Alaskan myself, I grew up hunting, camping, fishing. I teach my kids how to fish every opportunity I get. We're really lucky down on the Kenai River, where we have an abundant supply of sockeye salmon. And having that great of a resource and being able to share it with not only our friends and family, the next generation, but also with visitors that come up is key. Brings in dollars to our state.
Rebecca, as coming up down to you, your industry's, support mission central to what the Western Caucus advocates for, which is oil and gas development and our energy independence and energy dominance. What are you seeing right now in terms of investment trends in Alaska? And where do you see, the industry going in Alaska?
Well, right now, people are pretty fired up. I've been at the Alliance for 16 years, and this is probably the strongest development cycle that we've seen in decades. In oil and gas, we're looking at, in the next 5 years, $15 to $20 billion invested. In the mining industry, you're looking at another 10 to 12. If AK LNG hits their target rates, you could add another 11 billion to that. So again, those numbers for us are so huge, and we haven't seen that in a long time. So people are excited about that. And some of those projects are projects that are in the advanced development stage, getting ready to produce, and some are those that are just starting in the development stage. So back to the comments about the permitting reform, absolutely critical to us seeing those numbers. On the low end, it could be 35 billion. On the high end, it could be 70 billion.
I always like talking about the perils, and what if we don't get hurt? What if the status quo goes forward? What's the impact? What's the impediment there for development in Alaska?
Well, I'll just start by saying that when those things happen, and I've seen that happen a couple times, because of the unique, we always like to say Alaska is unique, and it is, just to be clear. It's very unique. An interesting thing for the support industry, a cycle that's very hard for our members to break, is that when you ramp up for development, and you get your people and you get your equipment up there, and then that development goes away, all of our people go away and all of our equipment goes away. And they don't just stay in Alaska, they leave. And so then when we ramp up again, it's very hard for us to get that back in a timely fashion.
Deantha, come back to you. Can you talk about the mining industry, what it means? Because what I always look at Alaska is it's like everyone, oil and gas, Alaska pipeline, that issue, but diversification of the Alaska economy is as huge as anything else as well. So you're not reliant on just that one industry. How's the mining industry contributing to it, and what's the future there for Alaska?
So I think, and I don't think I'm biased on this one, is that mining actually is one of the most prolific industries for what Alaska's future looks like. We are vastly undeveloped, untapped, underexplored. And so we do know of a lot of defined deposits of minerals across Alaska that have not seen development and investment yet. And we know that there's a lot more out there that we don't know about. So in a really long-term game, mining is a key player in our industry. And I really appreciated Rebecca's point about the employment. I think members of the public, and in the public narrative, there's this ramp up investment, ramp down conversation, and people don't understand the meaningful human impact of that. When, and this goes to your previous question a little bit too, when we see permitting reform, the things that come in permitting reform that we desperately need, when we see investment in mining projects ramp up and people are brought to Alaska and equipment is invested in, and then when we see the political winds change and projects shut down, even some that are already permitted or the permitting stops, that all of that goes away. And it's not just, I understand that the public at large doesn't have sympathy for the mining company, but the impact on the people that were there, the communities that were benefited nearby, that's a really meaningful impact. And so for a long-term game, we're really excited and optimistic and proud that mining can be a key, meaningful change for the regions of Alaska where we have the biggest impact. We're never going to be the state contributor. Sorry, this is such a long answer. We're never going to be the state stable pillar in terms of what the state government gets, but we are the most impactful factor in regional economies. And when we look at the Red Dog mine to see that.
And we've seen out-migration in Alaska over the last decade or so. And so just piggybacking on those answers again, having these opportunities, making sure that we stabilize the permitting system so that young people also aren't experiencing kind of the whiplash, and that they know that they've got jobs that they can have in Alaska and raise their family on. So we hope to see a reversal in the out-migration hopefully pretty soon.
And it's a really good point on the workforce and what it means to the Alaska Native community as well and how that plays in. Can you further elaborate on what this means to the Alaska Native communities and these isolated communities all around Alaska that don't have roads to them?
Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about Red Dog again. But honestly, we have seen, obviously a lot of Alaska is very vast and remote. And it's very hard to live in some of those communities without an anchor tenant like a mine. And you can see when you look at the Red Dog mine began producing in 1989. And the Northwest Arctic region has absolutely transformed. Those villages are flourishing. They don't have a lot of out-migration. They have great community services and buildings and infrastructure. And you need that sort of regional, investment in something big that brings good schools, good roads, good investments in firehouses, et cetera. And there are places elsewhere in Alaska that don't have that development, some even on the road system that are still on honey buckets, which I'm not going to describe, that are very, very under infrastructured. And it's so meaningful to have something like a mining development in a remote area to change the entire region.
An example that a lot of us like to bring up, and I won't get the stats exactly right, but the concept is what's most important, is there was a study that was done in the mid-70s, mid-80s on life expectancy across the country. And the region of the country that had the highest increase of life expectancy was the North Slope. And why was that? That's because that's when we were building the pipeline, that's when oil started flowing down the pipeline, and it completely transformed the lives of the people in the North Slope. They didn't have running water. They didn't have basic services. And so it was significant. It wasn't you're increasing the life expectancy by a year. It's something like a
13 years.
Yeah. So there's people in the room who actually know those statistics a little bit better than I do, but it's amazing to see what it can do for community.
Congressman, you want to talk about what you guys are working on, your office and yourself for the Native community with all this development stuff?
I'll tell you what, there's a lot. I'm proud to say that our office has passed more legislation than anyone in the United States House in the 119th Congress.
Woo!
And so, and unlike a lot of the things that happen here, these are good bills. So, but a lot of that legislation is focused on opportunities for the Native communities in Alaska. And, there's land, to understand this would take a longer conversation than we have time allocated for today, but there's Alaska-specific legislation that's been transformational for the Alaska Native communities in Alaska. The cornerstone of that legislation is called ANCSA, and it governs the relationship between the federal government and Alaska Native communities. But as a part of that, there's a significant amount of land transfer obligations to the federal government. And we've been working on making sure that we are unlocking remaining land obligations from the federal government for our Alaska Native communities. A lot of that is tied to development for those communities. Some of that is tied to resource development opportunities. But one of the things that we've been doing in my office is we've been working on a number of CRAs, so Congressional Review Act actions. And so we have been able to work with the Senate to pass 3 key CRAs that unlock major parts of the state of Alaska. The Biden administration came in and they passed about 70 executive orders and actions, or enacted those during the Biden administration. We have been working to durably repeal those actions through Congressional Review Act activities in the Congress. And we passed Central Yukon CRA. We passed a CRA with respect to ANWR and in the NPRA. And what does that do? It durably repeals those Biden-era regulations to unlock tens of millions of acres of Alaska lands that in many cases directly benefit our native communities. And so it's a complex set of sort of domino-like legislation, but it all has been started in this Congress. We've made tremendous progress. And I think the best evidence of that progress has been the successful lease sale in the NPRA. This is 1.3 million acres of land successfully leased here just a few weeks ago. It's the most successful lease sale in the NPRA that we've ever had in state history. And it was the first lease sale that we've had in the last 7 years. We attracted Exxon back to the state, Shell back to the state, and we need those majors in Alaska in order to develop the kind of large-scale projects that are going to really be impactful for the state. We talk about resources and why they're so important, but let me explain this. In a lot of communities, you've got manufacturing. In other communities, you have tech, right? In Alaska, we have resources. And resources bring in the primary dollars that then have the opportunity to circulate through a community. If you don't have that primary industry, you don't get those dollars. You can't employ a restaurant worker. You can't have gas stations. You can't have all these other things that are secondary or tertiary to the primary industries that you need. We need resources in Alaska. This administration has been supportive of making sure that we unlock those resources for the benefit of Alaskans and the nation. And that benefits everyone, including our native community throughout the state.
Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I couldn't say it any better.
And kind of looking at that and unwinding, this regulatory stranglehold that Biden put on Alaska to an extent, and looking at Alaska as a potential breadbasket for oil and mineral, gas and energy, fishing, and all these resources. How do you explain? I've got to each go down the line here. Alaska's unique. Obviously you go to Alaska and you always, that's what you hear, and it truly is. But how do you explain that to people who've never been there, but say, hey, we want to make the state a park. You can't do this. How do you explain the uniqueness of life? For I'm going to say New York City congressmen who are trying to push legislation to stop Alaska from doing things.
I'd say one of the most interesting things I find in the state, especially working on the Oil and Gas Historical Society now, we're just trying to educate people about the industry. When you drive in Texas, you see a pump jack everywhere, right? Probably half the people, probably even more now because we've had such high out-migration, have never seen a drill rig, right? Because it's on the North Slope. In fact, I spoke at a young professionals conference 2 weeks ago, and I asked people to raise their hand if they'd ever been on the North Slope, and maybe 10 out of 150 have. Right? So most Alaskans don't even know what those things look like because they don't see them. So that makes us even more susceptible to the attacks and to the people wanting to turn Alaska into a park because our own people don't even understand what the industry looks like and how it works.
But I will say, and I know data is not sexy, but we know all the time because we ask the question all the time through public opinion surveys. The public of Alaska is highly supportive of resource development in the 70% range. And so that's part of what we're doing here right now this week in Washington, D.C. is Alaska on the Hill, this group. It's 15 organizations, and it's a lot of people that you wouldn't expect to be working together, but that's the only way we get things done in Alaska is to work together. So we've got, tourism with us, we've got mining, we've got fishing, we've got oil and gas, we've got commercial and sport fishing, we have the support industries, Chamber of Commerce, the construction industries, I'm missing some Alaska Native corporations. And so it just makes it really unique, I think. So our group has something in common with every single office that we're going to visit over the next couple of days. So that's kind of pretty unique, I think, from a statewide perspective that we all work so closely together. And we're able to get our toe in at least on some topic in these offices and then show them that we work together, that we're very proud of our record, especially environmentally in Alaska, that we can do it better than everybody else. We remind them of that.
One of the things, and I'll just add quickly, one of the things that I try to do is extend invitations to all members, right, Democrat and Republican, to come to Alaska and see Alaska for themselves. And through the work of the House Natural Resources Committee last year, we were able to bring a bipartisan group of folks up to Alaska, and we showed them our mining, we showed them our timber, we showed them how we work with industry in harmony with the environment. And, we were down in Southeast, and we were able to go over to Greens Creek Mine, which is a highly productive domestic silver mine, and show folks on both sides of the aisle, look, this is in a national monument, and it's operating, it's a mine that's operating responsibly, has a fantastic track record, is important, it's a critical mineral, silver. People often don't realize you need this for solar panels and other high-tech implementation. It's not just beautiful coin, it does a whole lot more than that. But you know what? Those meetings can be transformational. And some of these members were from the East Coast. They came back, and in our discussions, on the record and off the record, their perspective on Alaska has fundamentally changed because they saw it in person. And I think that's what's so exciting about what we're doing with the Western Caucus here soon. We're going to bring more members to the state of Alaska so they can see for themselves and have conversations with industry experts about how we work to develop and deliver for the United States in a way that maintains the beauty and the respect for the environment that we have as Alaskans.
Shannon, we're talking about the industry side, but we're also talking about, recreation fishing, like tourism drivers you just mentioned. How, what are you mentioning to, when you're gonna go to the office, what are you talking about? What are you gonna tell people who haven't been there that they need to know?
Well, I'm not going to tell you all the secret fishing holes, first of all. And I'm not going to tell you how to hook a fish like a bass, because we don't do that on the Kenai. We're mainly talking about the Sportfish Restoration Reauthorization Act, the fund there. That's key to conservation projects. So that's the federal excise tax on fishing equipment that's then turned back around and given back to the states to invest. That's key. That creates access, responsible access, and then also the restoration work that we do. So with the Kenai River Sport Fishing Association, when we're looking at developing a bank angler location, we're concerned about the fish habitat. And we will put in infrastructure like light penetrating platforms and boardwalks that help protect that and keep that bank stabilized. And so that folks can still access the resource and do it responsibly. And that takes a lot of dollars.
Actually, I'm gonna go down the panel and say, each one of you, what are you gonna stress when you're talking to folks not from Alaska in their offices?
Well, I think Katie mentioned it before that we have so many things in common with every congressional office that we're scheduled to meet with. We all work with the same ministries who regulate our states. And so I think our two messages are everything that we have that the world needs, and also the back to the permitting reform, the durability we have. We're in an incredible environment right now. I saw a stat yesterday that Secretary Burgum, 1 out of every 3 tweets he does is about Alaska. So we have so much focus on Alaska right now, and we love it, but we want to make it last. And so we need durability. We need things to be codified so that the $70 billion that we're looking at is there, and that's just what we're looking at in the short term, but so that it's there, in the next 10 years for the second phases of some of these projects, so that we have more being invested. So durability and everything that we have that the world needs.
And I would say, one of my objectives is to also just let these folks know that we are a resource to them. We, of course, have an incredible party of 3 representing the state. They do an incredible job, but if we can just extend the voice even greater and let them know that we're available as a resource. All these policies have an outsized impact in many cases in Alaska. So, WOTUS comes to mind, the roadless rule comes to mind. So that they have to, they've got extra faces that they're looking at, not just the 3, but all these other Alaskans that this is impacting. And so just wanting to tell that story too, don't forget us. What you're doing has a really big impact.
Yeah, I think I'm trying not to be redundant, but I hope that those in the audience have heard the words that Katie and Rebecca said about the unity that we are bringing into this week. My miners cannot succeed without relying on Shannon's members for how do we take care of our fish as we're developing our projects. We all have a unified message because we all have the same challenges and the same opportunities. And when we come here and say we are looking for durable, long-term permitting reform, it is a message that I, alongside my colleagues at the commercial and sports fisheries and tourism that relies on people coming up to see a beautiful state, all of us are aligned in a message like that because we have such close ties on the opportunities and challenges front.
Awesome. Well, you talked about bringing people to Alaska. People, need to come up there and see it, kick the tires, fish in the view. I'm gonna start Rebecca coming down the line here. If I'm coming to Alaska and I've never been before, what's the absolute must-do thing to see, place to go?
Well, I'm a big golfer, so I think you have to golf every course in the state. And there aren't that many, so you can do it.
You can do it, actually,
You
and you
can.
can do it at 10 p.m.
Yes, that's right. You can go up to Fairbanks and golf one of the more beautiful courses I've ever seen actually in the United States, and do it at 10 p.m. Land of Midnight
Which
Sun.
course is that?
Chain Bend.
That's gorgeous.
Okay, me?
Yeah.
Well, this one's a given. I say you gotta fly fish on the Kenai and catch a 30-inch rainbow trout.
I'd like to do that. One day, you have done that. With me in the
It's the only
boat.
time I've ever fly fish, so I can never get again. Honestly, this is such a soft answer. You go to the airport, you go right back to wherever you visited and spend more time there. There's nothing, I've lived in Alaska my entire life. I'm 45 years old, and I cannot give you a favorite thing. Our state is so spectacular. Just spend as much time as you can there and do it all. And all of us are a resource to you. You come up, the Congressman has my phone number, he'll give it to you. And we would love to be tour guides and show you everything that our great state has to offer.
I'm gonna, CLIA, by the way, the Cruise Line International Association is one of the sponsors of Alaska on the Hill this week. I am not a cruising person, but I've had the opportunity now to do 3 cruises in Alaska, work cruises, if you can believe it. It is amazing, and there's no way you're gonna be able to see that section of Alaska affordably than doing it by cruise. And so if you're not a cruise person, I would think about doing that, especially if you're for your first visit to Alaska. You'll see just the most incredible beauty. It's a postcard for the full 7 days. So I would say take a cruise to Alaska, then stay longer. And then we'll take you to the golf courses and the rivers.
Fishing holes. Shannon will show you the fishing holes.
Deantha's favorite bar.
So, boy, this is
You
a
can
question
get more than-
fraught
you
with
can get more
risk
than
for a
one.
person.
You're on camera.
Look, I think there's so much to see in Alaska. A lot of people who come to Alaska, they start with the cruises.
Yeah.
And that's step one.
Yeah.
And step 2 is usually they come back to the state to explore the rest of it. Because if you think about just how large Alaska is, we're 2.5 times the size of Texas with the population of a Dallas suburb. Okay, we are a big state. And when people come on cruises, they come, and let me tell you, coastal Alaska is absolutely stunning. So you need to make sure that's part of your trip to Alaska. But when they come into what we call Southeast, which is, down Ketchikan, Juneau, right? Skagway, Sitka, yeah, exactly, Southeast, okay.
Alaska.
So this little piece, that piece of Alaska is the size of Florida, okay? There's a lot more left to explore. And so spend time in coastal Alaska, but then come up to the interior because you will never run out of things to do. And let's not forget Denali National Park, incredible place. Make sure that's on your list as well.
I have to say, my favorite was, this is a lot of them, I've been there more than a few times, is jet boating at the Talkeetna River on a clear day with Denali in the background. It's something special.
Yeah.
So, but you'll all find your something special when you go. And Southeast Alaska is best seen by boat on a cruise. So there's a lot there. Congressman, you want to give us some closing words before we?
Well, I'll tell you what, we know that developing resources in Alaska has been a challenge in the past. But we have overcome that challenge, and we have a spectacular track record. We've got a pipeline that's been operating since the 70s in Alaska, and we're very proud of that. And we're excited about the opportunities to hopefully put one right next to it for natural gas. The world needs, as Rebecca mentioned, the world needs what we have, right? The critical minerals that we have nearly every critical mineral on the critical minerals list in economic quantities in Alaska. When it comes to energy, and there's a lot of conversation around energy right now, both with what's happening in the Middle East, but also with what's happening around the corner for AI data centers and other high-tech needs. There is no larger pool of untapped energy in North America than what is available in Alaska's North Slope. Nowhere else. We have what the nation needs. The challenge has been broader than Alaska, though. It takes 29 years in the United States to permit a mine, according to S&P Global. 29 years. Let me tell you where it doesn't take 29 years to permit a mine. China. If you think they're waiting 29 years from the time they discover something to the time they develop it, you're wrong. And if we're going to be competitive, we're going to have to change fundamentally the way that we think about the regulatory structure that comes out of this town. We're working on that with the SPEED Act. I'm excited about the opportunity to hopefully get that through the Senate. It passed the House. And I'll tell you a little story about that. You know, I wanted to co-sponsor that bill. And usually you can pretty easily co-sponsor a bill, but in this case, I went to the committee and they said, you know what? You got to find a Democrat if you want to co-sponsor this bill, because we're doing this together, bipartisan fashion. And I went out and I found a Democrat willing to come in with me and co-sponsor that bill, but it is bipartisan. We recognize that's going to be necessary in order to get this thing through the finish line. 62% of the land in Alaska is owned by the federal government. So what happens here really impacts what happens back in my home state. And that's not just true for Alaska, that's true for most of the Western states. And that's why it's a privilege and an honor to be the executive vice chair of this important body representing the West in Congress. And I look forward to working with you. If you've got questions, my office is open to you. You've got challenges. We've had some success in addressing those in this Congress, and we're happy to talk with you and find a solution to those challenges. But let's give a round of applause for the Alaskans who are here to educate us.
And can we get a round of applause for our Executive Vice Chair, Begich? And all the work that he's doing. Appreciate you joining us. Again, you can see this on live. Thank you to the panel. Good luck this week. Go out and slay, please. And have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
We'll come back anytime.
Yeah.